Hello bakers, welcome to another episode of the Dough Doctor. I'm your host and baking expert, Chef Colette. Thank you so much for joining me in the kitchen. If you're on the live, welcome, welcome. And if you're watching on the replay, welcome to you too. So today we're gonna handle our questions first, and then I'm gonna continue this thread about ratios. I had a request from one of our bakers, Emerald Cupcake Los Angeles, who does such beautiful work. You have to follow him. He's amazing. And he asked me to talk about ganache and ratios. I teased that in yesterday's promo for the show, and I hope you'll find this very interesting. And as always, bakers, if you have questions, please drop them in the comments below. Let me know where you're logging on from. And what are you baking this weekend? Do you bake more in the winter, my bakers, or do you bake less? Is it snowing where you are? Are you snowed in with 10 pounds of flour? Or maybe you're on a beach enjoying the sun. I don't know. Let us know. All right, let's get started. So the questions that came in this week were all about gelatin. So we're going to answer those questions that were all about gelatin. So the question that came in, one of our bakers was making a panna cotta, which is a light custardy adjacent dessert that is Italian in origin and super versatile. It has no egg in it. It's like a creamy, milky jello. And that doesn't mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I happen to truly love jello. Excuse me a moment. I happen to truly love jello, and panna cotta can be transcendent and amazing. And it's a really good dessert choice if you're baking or cooking for someone who has an egg allergy. You know, it's a little rare, but they do happen. So anyway, panna cotta. And panna cotta is stabilized with gelatin. Now, our baker's gelatin didn't set. It was completely liquidy. And she wanted to know what went wrong. Well, pretty much, working with gelatin is pretty straightforward, but things can go wrong. And let's talk about what can go wrong. And I am talking about powdered gelatin. There is also leaf gelatin, which I'm going to show you right now, which is really so easy to use. It's why every professional pastry chef on the planet, and even some non-pros, turn to it all the time. If I can get it out of the package, you know what? I have scissors. We have tools, right, bakers? We're all about the tools. So this is a leaf gelatin, and this is powdered gelatin. You've probably seen it in the supermarket in little packages that are usually orange, and the company that has, at least in the United States, has the market on gelatin, powdered gelatin, is a company called Knox, K-N-O-X. And I really am sorry that I lost the label to my Knox gelatin, but you'll see it. I'm sure many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. So our gelatin can go wrong, and you know, you might be thinking, well, chef, I never make panna cotta. I never really work with gelatin. But if those of you who are cake bakers and want to stabilize a filling, gelatin can work. Anytime you want to stabilize anything, a curd, a filling, gelatin can be a very friendly way to do it. So let's just talk about how to have success with your gelatin and what could have gone wrong, and what I actually, after talking to that baker, I know what went wrong. Number one, when we're working with powdered gelatin, the liquid to powdered gelatin ratios have to be exact. It's an easy ratio. We're starting our theme of ratios. 5 parts cold liquid to 1 part powdered gelatin. So what does that mean? Well, powdered gelatin can come in a container like this, or it can come in packages, kind of like active dry yeast does. And in each one of those packages is 7 grams of gelatin. Now, 7 grams of powdered gelatin will set up 16 ounces of liquid. Now, just very quickly, you want to watch what you are using your gelatin, what ingredients you're marrying with your gelatin. If you're using any acidic ingredients or any fruits like pineapple or kiwi, your gelatin won't set up. And that's because there's an enzyme in fresh lemon juice and kiwi and pineapple that works against the gelatin and it won't set up. Okay, so back to our ratio. 1 part powdered gelatin to 5 parts liquid. Typically we use water, but you can use liquid from your recipe. Just make sure it's not fresh pineapple and fresh kiwi. All right. Oh, I covered up my scale. Oh my God. Okay, so we're gonna pretend that, we have, and I'm gonna do this so you can see it, and I'm gonna clear my work surface. We're gonna sail into chocolate in just a second. And then I see Island Bound would like to be in a live video. That's great. Please check your settings in Instagram to make sure you can do that. That's been the sticky wicket with going live, coming in and asking questions live is your settings on Instagram. I think I'm all set on this end. Just do a little check and it should work. All right, so I'm gonna scale out 7 grams of gelatin, and right here, just as though we had a little package. And I wanted to do this so you could see it. And you want to be exact. When you're scaling, you can be 1 to 2 grams off, but that's it. And please try not to be off at all. Whoops, I got a little heavy there. I went to 8. I'm there, 7. All right. So we have 7 grams of gelatin. So let's do the math. If we have 7 grams of gelatin and we need 5, so the ratio is 5 parts liquid to 1 part gelatin, bakers, how much cold liquid do I need to hydrate my gelatin? Let me know in the comments. How much cold liquid, if I have 7 grams of gelatin, do I need to hydrate or bloom? Exactly, AC, 35. And I'm just using water from the refrigerator, nice and cold. That's the other thing that can throw off your gelatin not setting. If the liquid you're hydrating the gelatin in isn't cold, there's going to be a problem. And then the best way to handle gelatin is water first. And this doesn't need to be on the scale, but what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to put down, I've been really thinking about how things look on camera more and more. So with that piece of white paper underneath, I think you'll be able to see. And what you want to do is you just want to sprinkle the gelatin, which is heavier than the water, on top and kind of let it drop down before you sprinkle more. One thing that can be a problem is we just go really fast. We're not patient. And remember, baking is all about patience, which is sometimes why people are like, I can't bake. I don't have that patience. But I believe patience is something we find. So any cooks out there watching the show, I am going to ask you to find the patience for baking, because baking makes us better cooks. All right, so I sprinkled slowly the 7 grams of gelatin over the 35 grams of water. Again, with powdered gelatin, cold liquid, and a 5-to-1 ratio. 5 parts liquid to 1 part gelatin. And what's cool about that, you guys, we could do it in grams, but you could also do it by volume. I know we love metric and weighing because it's so accurate, but let's say you don't have a scale. You could do 1 teaspoon of gelatin to 5 teaspoons of cold liquid. No problem. All right. Now, if we look at this, it's immediately set up, but I got to show you there's a little bit of powder on top. So I'm going to take my spatula, and instead of stirring it, I'm going to just try to kind of push it under the liquid. What can happen when bakers are inexperienced with working with gelatin, they look at that and they go, oh my God, that cannot be right. And they add more liquid, and then the product that they're making doesn't set, because this is really critical. And it should look, when it's set up, like applesauce, just like applesauce, and thick applesauce at that. So we're gonna put this aside, and we're gonna take a look at it in just a minute. I usually let it sit for 5 minutes before I do anything else with it. And just really quickly, leaf gelatin needs no ratios. It just gets put in ice water, and it will become super rubbery, and it will be, it's gonna feel kind of strange, but once it becomes soft, you can pull it out of the water, you can strain it or squeeze out the excess moisture and use it. 1 sheet of this gelatin, and there are different grades of gelatin. Typically the gelatin we buy, you can order, typically it's, well, let me backtrack. There's bronze gelatin, silver gelatin, gold, and I think platinum. I mean, the mind reels, right? But powdered gelatin is the same as bronze leaf gelatin. All the leaf gelatins work the same. I would buy bronze or silver if you're gonna treat yourself to a nice box of leaf gelatin. And 1 sheet of gelatin is equal to 1/2 teaspoon, or roughly 4 grams of powdered gelatin. There, that's just about all you need to know. Once the gelatin sets up, so we bloom it or hydrate it in cold liquid, then we need to dissolve it so that it's liquid before we add it to whatever it is we're thickening. That is not a word, thickening. So hold on, let me show you really quickly, and then I'm gonna see if we can go live with Island Bound. And I'm gonna use the microwave to dissolve my gelatin. Bloom or hydrate in cold, dissolve, and then we dissolve it either in the microwave or over a double boiler. I have done it over direct heat, but that's a little dicey. All right, so now it's liquid, and it smells kind of weird at this stage, but that's okay. That will dissipate. And then what you want to do is you want to let it cool slightly before carrying on with your recipe. So that's gelatin in a nutshell. If this is added to when it's like ripping hot, it can throw off the setting as well, okay? So I hope my bakers who were struggling with gelatin, that this helps really well. And last but not least, I was just checking my notes. Gelatin desserts, anything that you use gelatin with, whether it be like a beautiful fresh fruit tart so that your pastry cream cuts clean, or you make a pavlova with a beautiful curd that's stabilized with a little bit of gelatin so it doesn't run. I mean, truly, or you make a stabilized whipped cream with gelatin, which can be just really wonderful and work really well if you need the whipped cream to be stabilized. Those items need to be kept refrigerated until just about you're ready to serve. Because if they stay out in temperatures that are too warm, first of all, we have to worry about food safety, but also if gelatin sits out and it's like a warm summer day, it will liquefy. All right, that's the lecture on gelatin, and I hope that helped. All right, let me see if I can bring in Island Bound. Oh, great. I'm not seeing you. I'm not seeing you, Island Bound. I should see you. Oh no, bummer. Okay, all right. So we'll just put a pin in that. Again, if you want to go live and ask your question, that would be great fun. But make sure you've got that setting. You have that setting toggled in Instagram. All right, now let's go on to ratios and ganache. And just to recap from the beginning, this was a suggestion by one of our bakers, Emerald Cupcake Los Angeles, who is a super talented LA baker. And I thought it was an excellent suggestion, so we're going to carry on with this. And just bakers, if you have an idea for a demo or something you would like explained, please don't hesitate to message me. I welcome your ideas. I really want you to drive the show, because if you have that question, you want to see that demo, I guarantee a bunch of other of your fellow bakers would like to see it too. And put it in the comments if anything I talked about with the gelatin was useful or helpful, and then the next time you go to use it, you're like more confident, because that's the whole point of the whole point of the demos. Now, I just got a comment that my voice is sounding strange, and I apologize. I don't have an auxiliary microphone on my my iPad, but hopefully it will even out and I will sound normal again. Thanks for letting me know, though. All right, let's talk about ganache. What exactly is ganache? For us as bakers and pastry chefs, whether we're working on our own, doing our own beautiful creations for friends and family, or we're working in a professional kitchen, ganache comes up. Now, there's lots of theories about what ganache is, what it means. Well, pretty clear on what it is. It's a combination of cream and chocolate, usually cream, sometimes butter, that is super versatile. And that's why it comes up so much for us and we see it. As a matter of fact, you might remember last summer that beautiful icing I made with ganache and American buttercream. We can do something like that with ganache. We can use ganache to glaze a cake. We can whip ganache in the mixer to make a frosting, or we can pour it, put it in the refrigerator, let it set up, cut it, and dip it in tempered chocolate to make some beautiful bonbons or molded truffles. So it's incredibly versatile. And what defines what we use it for is that ratio of chocolate to cream. Now, it's pretty important to use a chocolate that has a cacao percentage. On the package, that's really, really helpful. And mainstream grocery store chocolates like DoughDr and Ghirardelli 60%, and then even Baker's semi-sweet. Baker's semi-sweet in that 4-ounce box. No shade to Baker's, but that one truly is on the lower end of the spectrum. It will absolutely work, but one notch above is definitely the Ghirardelli at 60%. And it's a big 60 on the package. The package is brown, not gold Ghirardelli, That's the chips, and there's not enough cocoa butter in those chips to give you that true fluidity. About chocolate, if you live near a Whole Foods, they always sell pieces of really good chocolate. It's not inexpensive. It's Valrhona, which is a lovely French brand of high quality chocolate, but it is there. And in a Whole Foods, you'll find it by the specialty cheeses and sausages, that kind of thing. It'll be in that display. We can also order chocolate online. Amazon has more chocolate than we used to say Carter has pills back in the day. And there are other online sources for chocolate. Anyway, so we want to use a good quality chocolate. And the first thing I'm going to do is just make a very classic, I'm going to make a very classic 1-to-1 ratio ganache. And I'm using, sorry, it's a partial label, but this is from Trader Joe's and it's called Pound Plus. This is a 54% Belgian chocolate and it is distributed by the company Callebaut. And the reason I know that is because there is no chocolate that exits Belgium that is not part of the Callebaut cocoa berry empire. That's just fact. And this is really well priced, 17 ounces of chocolate for $4.99. You just want to make sure the semi-sweet is in the brown label, and then I think the bittersweet is red. You just have to really, there's no percentage on it. It's just like one of those secrets. There used to be a percentage, but they took that off the label. All right, so, and what I've done is I've chopped it up, and I'm just going to heat up I have 6 ounces of chocolate, or 170 grams, and I'm heating up 6 ounces, or 170 grams, of heavy cream. You can use heavy whipping cream or heavy cream. And bringing the cream to a low boil is important for a couple reasons. The residual heat is going to melt the chocolate, and then also heating the cream, getting it nice and hot, also helps your ganache last longer. In other words, it extends its shelf life. So we want to make sure we get the cream up to a low boil, okay? So that's that. Now, when we're working with milk and white chocolate, we don't do that 1-to-1 ratio. The 1-to-1 ratio, cream to chocolate ratio, is reserved for semi-sweet and bittersweet ganache. Because white chocolate, and I have some white chocolate here, this is from my local Whole Foods. This is Valrhona Ivoire, which is just the sexiest white chocolate on the market. It really is lovely. And then here I've got the Valrhona milk chocolate. So for white and milk, we really do kind of need to posh out a little bit and invest in good chocolate. I will say, I feel like a Whole Foods commercial, and bakers, I don't mean to be, but the 365 white baking chips, they seem to work okay for most white chocolate applications. I have used them for white chocolate mousse. They've worked out pretty well. So we're going to bring the cream to a low boil, and we're going to deal with this first. And on deck for your tools, you want to have a whisk and a spatula. You could also use a stick blender. I'm not going to do that because it's noisy and I don't want to, it doesn't work as well. If we had to, but we don't have to. So I've got my cream up to a low boil, and I'm going to dump it on top of my chocolate. Now, many of you are like, oh yeah, ganache. We've made ganache before. Well, just a couple tips on this. What you want to do is kind of shake the bowl so that the chocolate is submerged under the cream. I'm making focaccia this afternoon, so I happen to have this piece of plastic wrap left over from my bulk fermentation. So I'm going to get one more use out of it. I've also thrown a dinner plate on top of this bowl, which I actually found like hanging out. Someone was throwing it away, and I just love it so much, I grabbed it. I didn't dive directly into the dumpster. It was by the dumpster, but one man's garbage is another man's treasure, or woman's. Anyway, so reusing the plastic wrap just for about a minute so that residual heat is trapped on top of the chocolate. And again, the chocolate was just chopped. The cream was heated to a good low boil. I didn't let it come up. I didn't like overboil it. I just let it heat. And then we're just gonna whisk it. And it becomes smooth pretty quickly. Now, the one thing you do have to do is you have to scrape down the side of the bowl. That's pretty important. So that's why you need the spatula. Now, I know, you see folks, and I've done it myself. You see me do it on Craftsy, where I just use the spatula. But I really feel the whisk works quite well. And then let me show you, because as much as I love this bowl, so look at this. Isn't that just gorgeous? I literally feel like Willy Wonka. So that is just 1-to-1 ganache, 1-to-1 chocolate and cream, our classic ganache. What would that be? Our classic ganache, nice and easy. And then you could use this. Let's say I had a cake on deck. I could somewhere. I don't. But let's say I did. I could use this to glaze a cake. Or I could let this sit for several hours. And I apologize, bakers, I don't have one to show you. But after covered and let it sit for a couple hours at room temperature, it transforms and you can use it. It becomes the consistency of canned frosting or Nutella, and it's pipeable. So it's really gorgeous to fill butter cookies or macarons. Like, so much goes on. But after about 4 hours, you want to refrigerate it if you don't want it to sit out too long. Back in the day, we used to let it sit out overnight, and I have to say that made me quite nervous. So, a couple hours is okay. You'll see it. And if you need it to transform in a hurry, you just quickly put it over ice water and don't let any water get into it, and let it firm up for a few seconds, and that will speed up that process even more quickly. All right. So this is classic ganache. Again, a 1-to-1 ratio. And I'm going to finish up by talking about white chocolate and milk chocolate ganache. And the ratios for them are exactly the same. So I'm going to make a white chocolate ganache in front of you. All right. So we'll put this classic over to the side. Let me make sure. Yes, I have a whisk, so we're good. But here's the thing. This really lovely, gorgeous Valrhona Ivoire, it has the aforementioned milk solids in it. So because this has milk solids in it and more sugar than this is about 36% cacao, which means it's 64% sugar and then all those milk solids, whereas this is 54, which means it's 46. So we have a difference here. So this is going to liquefy more quickly. So my ratio is 2 parts white chocolate to 1 part cream. But here's the problem, bakers. The chocolate doesn't melt with that small amount of cream. So what we do is we pre-melt or partially melt the white chocolate. I use the microwave because all my advanced chocolate training that I've done, the chocolatiers use the microwave because it's a dry heat and we don't have to worry about any steam or water from a double boiler getting into our chocolate and causing it to seize. And that means when a drop of water gets back in the chocolate, because water has been removed from the chocolate during processing, if water gets into our chocolate, it seizes because it's sort of like it reverts back to its natural state. So we have to keep water away from it. It's processed very carefully so that all the water is removed. When I melt chocolate, my 30-second button on my microwave is my best friend. If I was doing it over a double boiler, unless I was maybe melting 4 kilos of chocolate, I bring the water up to a low boil and then or a boil, and then I turn it off and I let all that great steam and that residual heat melt my chocolate. Remember, we really, okay, there we go. So I've partially melted this white chocolate, and now this was 4 ounces. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to grab my scale and I'm going to bring to a boil half, which would be 2 ounces of cream. And I found this, I've talked about this before, but they're packaging cream in packages that don't have to go into the refrigerator until after you open it, which I think is awesome. All right, so I have this. I really don't want to fully melt it because if I get this all too hot, then my ganache could be grainy. And remember, whenever you're scaling heavy cream, it's heavy. So make sure you get all of it. We're going to go back to that low boil. And it's also important, we want the cream to be nice and hot, again, because it helps us conserve. It helps with the conservation. It helps with the shelf life of the ganache. So this ratio of 2 parts white chocolate, to 1 part cream is going to give you a similar texture to our classic semi-sweet or bittersweet ganache. You can also add a whisper of corn syrup or glucose if you happen to have it for more shine for your ganache. And a whisper is not a technical term. I know that. You can add a small amount, like maybe 5%. I bet you were thinking, oh, wait for it, she's going to say a percentage. I dream in baker's percentages. Okay, I'm putting the white chocolate, and I'm not going to do the milk. I'm going to let you guys get back to your kitchens and your weekend baking, but it's the same drill. Again, though, the difference is because of the milk solids in milk chocolate and white chocolate, there's also vanillin, which is the dried version of vanilla, good vanilla that goes into good chocolate. And there's more sugar, and when sugar is heated, we know that it liquefies. So those 3 things are why we don't do that 1-to-1 cream to chocolate ratio like we do with a classic ganache. All right, let's see what happens. And then we're going to troubleshoot. Last thing before we go today, we're going to troubleshoot what happens if you do all these things and your ganache is not perfectly smooth and silky. Ooh, this is gorgeous. This turned out really well. I'm looking for a bowl so I can pour it. Let me see. Ah, right here. I knew I had it. Mise en place, right? Mise en place, bakers. So check this out. Isn't that just luscious? And if you're a white chocolate lover, you are all over this. All right, great. So if you do all these things and your ganache has lumps of chocolate in it, you're going to set up a double boiler. And we always want to work in glass or stainless steel bowls. Plastic bowls, silicone bowls do not work as well when we're making ganache. It seems to know. How it knows, I have no idea, but it seems to. So again, and the great thing about, well, glass, we can put it in the microwave. Don't put your metal bowls in the microwave unless you can. I don't know if that's changed. But if your chocolate hasn't melted, you're going to set up a double boiler. You're going to have a dry towel at hand. You're going to let the water come up to a boil, turn it off, put that ganache on the stove for maybe 30 on over the hot water for about 30 seconds. Pick it up, wipe the bottom, and then go back to stirring your ganache. You could use the microwave, but you would want to have the heat in 15-second intervals. One last thing, when you melt chocolate in the microwave, you do want to stay at high power, which might feel counterintuitive because we don't want to really ever overheat chocolate. But so we have the power on high, but we watch our time. Again, those 30-second intervals are pretty safe. If it worries you, you can always do 15. All right, bakers, any questions? I have been babbling away. Okay, no, looks good for today. All righty, so I hope you have a wonderful weekend full of really fun baking. If you happen to be snowbound, I hope your pantry is well stocked and you can bake up something beautiful. Please tag me in your beautiful bakes because I love to see what you're doing, and then give it a shout out on the show. And we will be back February 3rd for another episode of the Dough Doctor. And if you'd like to see a demo, you want to see more information on ratios or a specific ingredient, just message me and I will make it happen. All right, everybody. Happy baking. Thanks for joining me in the kitchen.